Good evening, everyone, and a good yontif. Ben Shloshim Mekeach means that today is the Yom HaShloshim, the Yom HaBohir, from the opinion of Svarim. So we have more keach today than we had yesterday. That's the Yom Mashma. I remember when I was a youngster, mid-teenager, after Yud Shvat, Tovshin Yud, as a Bach, I didn't know what was going on too much in this Dorim that were being discussed amongst all the Chassidim, V'chuli. I don't even know who was the ones discussing going forward at the time. But one thing I realized from personal knowledge and from what I heard and saw was that Svarim are very important. In the Sichos, it talks about the Frierdiker Rebbe when he was young. He was an Ohev Svarim. He used to buy Svarim, collect Svarim. And we know B'meshech Yemei Chayav, he accumulated Svarim. He sent out letters of appeals for people who had Svarim, who wrote Svarim, who Chabad Svarim, should send them to his Eisef HaSvarim, his Asifriyah. And we know B'meshech Hashonim, the difficult travails that the Rebbe had in moving from one country to the next, in Greis Tsar and Yisurim, and he was a Bal Mesiras Nefesh, that he didn't want to leave any of the Svarim behind. He didn't want to leave when he had to until the Svarim went along with him. And B'meshech HaZman, the Svarim had to be left on piers, on docks. B'meshech HaZman, they were retrieved. Not all of them yet. We're still working on it. But it's gegeben dem Leben for the Sifriyah. In fact, as a young bacher, I knew that the Svarim, the library of the Rebbe, are the crown jewels. In terms of Nechosim, the library were the crown jewels. And as such, it's mashma, as if the Kisei Sholim has to be Sholim, you have to have the crown jewels. I want to divert for a moment. Mit Avremel mit der Zeit, heintige Pasche, morgendliche Pasche, verachtige Pasche. Sie gewinnen Lesig mit Yankov's Kinder, the Shvatim. For some reason they couldn't get along. The Torah tells us all about it, the Proteus. And there came a time where the 10 brothers sold Yosef in slavery. It's difficult. It's impossible to understand how brothers can do that with each other. Not to get along to the extent to the Torah that sailed. There came a time where there was a Rov Boretz, even Yankov Avinu, and Mishpachte, and we gedacht, foreign schicken Menschen in Mitzrayim, auf Lishba Bar. And it developed into a situation where the Yosef's brothers, who did such a tragic thing to him, had to come before him, Pasha, to have what to eat for them and the Bnei Beisom. The story is clear. The story is tragic. And what happened was, this morning, we learned in Pasha's Yigash, as Yosef, Hatzadik, Tzadik Elyon, sich Megala given to the Brider. His first question was, Ha'id Ovi Chai. That was his Daige, Kol HaShonim. Was about the Rumgeret and the Sichos from the Rebbe about the difference in the brachas. Was Yankov Avinu gebet Menashe and Ephraim. The Daige was Yankov Avinu hat gehabt wegen sein Sohn Yosef. Und der Daige was Yosef hat gehabt zu seinen Taten. Beim Kemei. Und die Sache geworden ein bisschen zurecht. Und Yosef hat gesagt, der Bruder, I want to make sure I'm quoting the pasuk right. V'ata al teyatzvu. You shouldn't feel bad for what you did. Because Kila Michya Shalachani Lefanechem. So we see that Sipur was Medaf Leben mit der Zeit talks about a horrible, incomprehensible tragedy, but there was a kavanah. The kavanah given ki lamichya shalachani aleichem, to keep the world alive, important shlichus. The Mishpat HaSvarim was a tragedy. You know basically the story. I don't have much time to speak, so I'm going to just focus on one point. And that is similar to the tragedy of Yosef Yaakov, that the tragedy occurred for a good purpose ultimately. The Batanish was Mahad Gehat. The Rebbe, the Rebbetzin, Chassidim, and there was a lot of collateral damage, a lot of damage that could not be brought back. Nevertheless, we were victorious. And the victory brought the Rebbe what was missing. When I was a youngster, I started saying tonight, they wanted to give the Rebbe a key to the library. And the Rebbe said he didn't want to have a key to the library. He wanted to have the key to the library. When all the Yodens, sämtliche Yodens and durchgegangen, and the Rebbe, that Bakosha was never Nismala. It had to come through this tragedy that Sof Kol Sof, it wasn't Nismala. The library became the Rebbe's, Agudas Chassidim Chabad, Chassidim, the Rebbe Chassidim, das ist ein Messias. And as the Rebbetzin said in her extraordinary deposition, and I was sitting next to her in her dining room, when the lawyers were battering her with questions, with a kavanah to confuse her, because that's the derech of a deposition. You ask different questions at different times of the deposition in different ways, and it's almost inevitable for a person who's not telling the truth to get mixed up. She didn't say an extra word. She spoke in a brilliant English, except a few words in Yiddish, and she didn't get Nizbalbal, and the lawyer saw that she couldn't get Nizbalbal, and towards the end they got frustrated, and they threw the pencils down on the dining room table as if to say, we thought we had her, and we missed it. She was our worst witness. And by the way, when the last day of the trial in federal court, the judge asked for a copy. He wanted to see her videotape deposition. And they brought a television set for his desk where the judge sits in court. And they put it on. We were facing his back of the television. We couldn't see what he was looking at. He looked at it for about 20 minutes and shut it off. And he said one word that gave us hope at that time. Remarkable. A judge usually doesn't reveal his hand. And maybe he didn't realize it, but he was revealing his hand. This was remarkable. And the Rebbe, when he spoke about her, mentioned the fact that she said, when she was asked the final question of a deposition, tell us, Mrs. Schneerson, the books, who did the books belong to? To your father or to the community? She said, my father owned nothing. Everything that he had belonged to Chassidim. This was the statement that probably was the strongest statement in support of the victory that we had. And like in many other things, all that we have are thanks to her. We did Rebbe gesagt, Yudel Krinsky, Tovshin, Shabbos, Pashat Vayetze, Yudel Krinsky, the 25th anniversary of the wedding. Yudel. So I want to conclude that Vatchi Yankiv Avinu, Vatchi Ruach Yankiv Avinu. This is what the trial brought to, and this is what we saw the Rebbe's chiyus. When I brought the psak into the Rebbe, it was not noticeable that he was impressed by it, but the Shana Abo. Let me read it. is Tavshin Mem Zayin. V'hayomim Ohel Niskarim V'nasim Tavshin Memches. V'hayomim Ohel Niskarim V'nasim B'chol der v'der Gamer Klemer V'veyim Zeh B'shana Shalach Hazeh ועל דרך זה מדי שונה בשונה נזכרים ועל ידי זה נעשים איסם העניונים שהיו בפעם הראשונה. להיקבע ויהיה מסגולה וישרצן בכל הכושר לנצח משל הסברה.
Good Yontev to all that gathered here and I understand have joined and participating through other means throughout the world. We wish you a good Yontev on this very special day. My revered and dear colleague Rab Yudel, who was right there from the beginning to the end, has just shared with you very important points, and the time allotted does not permit to go into any extended explanations, so therefore I'll try and limit myself just to a few thoughts. And as was said over here, the night is eine Nacht, mit verbringen jeder eine, wie versteht. Nos Shloshim b'Seifon. The very last words that we have heard from the Rebbe, both of us that had the schus to go in with the final information that the whole thing is finished, all parts of it. So that was the reaction. The Rebbe said, "Nu, jetzt wird man kennen." Now we'll be able to, and he paused, sagen, and he paused again briefly. Teure Chassidus. Das sind gewähnte Wörter von Rebbe. So, but from this, we are summarizing, we can summarize what was the whole thing about, that the Rebbe demonstrated or didn't withhold from us. What went in behind the came over, we'll never be able to know. It's not our geschäft to know what's Tzutzaban Rebbe. But he allowed to share with us, is summed up in the fact that he was prevented from Zogen Torah. Some will say, of course, that's when he stopped it, when he didn't say Mamorim, but this is in Perushim. But basically, what at stake over here was an interruption, a prevention, a Herm, a Hester von Reben, Zogen Torah. Van Chazeren, van Lernen, van Zogen am Eimer. Der Rebbe gesagt am Eimer. And that was interrupted. Können wir sich vorstellen, can we imagine what das meant? Van Reben. Also, wir können sagen. Yet, at the same time, the way one can see it, and not to limit it, but see it. Right at the very beginning, it was introduced with a medrash. A medrash in which it describes a situation with a community that lived and continued their life peacefully, when one day they encountered and they were told that you are going about your things in life as if nothing is happening. I would like you to know that this is Ruach, the positive spirit, that he was constantly challenged by the opposite of an evil spirit. Yetzer, a Ruach Roa, unbeknown to you. The people didn't know about it. And he was there protecting them to the point where they weren't aware that anything is happening. But he says, now has come the time when I can no longer do it on my own, and I have to involve you into this process. And involve you in this process in a very, very interesting way. He didn't demand of them anything supposedly special, except to come and to feel secure and sure of their victory and express it by that which will bring about the victory. To make noise. Anyone with anything that you have to your disposal that can make noise, you come and make noise. And then you scream out, the Dan Notzach. And they were not asked to depend that something has happened. They were told, you will see with your eyes. When you will see the appearance of a spot of blood on the water, then you will know that this was achieved. I will not go into now explaining the Medrash and so forth and so on. But the Medrash was and remains the basis of the repeat. This was repeated in our time, our day. The day that was entrusted and privileged with the one that was assigned to bring the Shechina lemata ba'oretz. The day Hashvi'i encountered on the way such difficulties, unbeknown to us to such an extent. And what was it all about? It was about the Eibeshter brought the time that we should be able to learn was is a Rebbe. And not only we, Chassidim, mit Chassidus, mit Aveda, mit Yerusha, mit Verbringenischen, but this should reach the world at large. And it came about in a very painful way. But what was the result? The result was in such a demonstrative way established as a Rebbe is Hecher von Teves. And not only established as in Indian conceptually in philosophy. That's not what the court is about. There you have to base it on fact. That turned philosophy and emunah into practical fact that enabled the goy, Zochel Atev, to use this as a basis. And what was it? As a Rebbe, wie der Rebbe schon gesagt, nicht nur seine Sachen belangen zu Chassidim, der Rebbe belangt zu Chassidim. Und that stood in supporting of an innocent document that initially was almost dismissed by the lawyers. And the Rebbe chose that as the document. It turned out to be the document. And what does the document say? That the Rebbe wrote that they all belong to Klal Yisrael. Teira Tzivolonu Meshe, Meiroshe Kehilas Yaakov. The Rebbe in dem der Ashvi had bewiesen, he showed to take the Gashmis and Tachten, not to destroy it, not to ignore it, but turn it into Ruchnis. And Rovo Kolame Yoretz in such a way. Gewaltig, mehrendig. Yes, ongekommen schwer. But the Rebbe hat nicht gekannt sagen, und dort gekannt sagen, kürzer vorstellen, wo das ist. Dort nicht gekannt sagen, und dort durch den Mann der ganzen Linie hat gesagt, jetzt wird man kennen, sagen, Teire. Ascheine, mit dem keine wer sein mir zu sagen, wir wissen, was wir, der hat uns geholfen, wir sagen gewesen, zu sehen, den Moment, when alles was mit gelernt, and all that we were told, and all that we learned, we believed in, and everything else, was turned into a fact, a reality. And that is what we have to recognize. The Hell and the Hester was to take the Sforim and turn them into simple objects that can raise money and make you money. Maybe even to hurt someone in the process. Noch eine Sache, aber wir nehmen das reden jetzt. Aber zu sagen, das ist der Means, von dem wird herauskommen, das haben wir gelernt. So what do we have to do? We have to be very conscientious from the fact. What do you given? What was at stake? And therefore not only to appreciate, but to know that this was done for our sake, so that we can take it and do with it what we are supposed to do. Show them how it's recorded in the federal law, the fact that there is such a Messiah as a Gashmizik mensch, a physical person, does not own. He has everything, but he doesn't own it because he and that is in service with Eberster. In English Wörter. So the Eberster helfen, that mir undas the Herren. We should not wait for that. That's what is a shliach is. A ewe dat gedaft horven. A shliach hot us allein. Because that's what we are about. We are given this as soon as we name them pekel zuvor of the shlichus, we have all of this already given to us. But in order to use it, to serve properly and share it with others. That's what it is. A good yontev and a good yor, l'chaim v'l'chaim v'l'brocha.